Um, do you remember the poem by Richard Wilbur, The Death of a Toad?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about the humor in that. He's obviously having a good time. I guess my problem with it is that he's having a good time at the expense of a tiny little defenseless animal.
I guess, but when I read that poem, the lawn becomes as big of a character for me as the animal does.
And do you have a lawn that you have to mow occasionally?
No, I'm a truck driver, so my wife hires somebody else to do that, and I'm never around.
You're a pavement guy, not a lawn guy.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, okay, but why is the lawn a character? I'm intrigued. This is great.
Well, you know, at the very end, it talks about the castrate lawn, and throughout the poem, the toad is moving around the lawn. It starts with him mowing the lawn,
right.
And for me, the lawn is almost like kind of symbolizing where he is. You know, the guy mowing the lawn is symbolized in the lawn itself, and just that life, that suburban life.
Yeah.
And I think that the tone of having, you know, coming across with so much just playfulness and just, you know, raw imagery is kind of playing on that. And I don't know, it's kind of playing on the fact that the lawn itself and the toad in the lawn is kind of representing him, and it just really worked for me. I got a lot out of it.
Yeah. That's great. So we're going to respond to this. Why don't you hang up and listen? But thank you so much for being. It's Stephen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being part of ModPo, and I hope you'll drive safely and keep up with us.
Definitely.
Great. Thank you for calling.
Yes. Thanks.
That was great. So, what about this toad? This is a frog, by the way, not a toad, but whatever. What about this?
Well,
Lily?
I like what Steven said about the lawn character, because it really, like, the poem is really about man versus lawn, and then, like, the toad got in the way, kind of, and then...
How dare he get in the way?
It's sort of this, like, thing that makes him ponder a dark aspect of his existence that he hasn't really maybe always been thinking about, is like this...
What I find really clever about this poem is that he invents a stanza form. So he sounds traditional. A toad the power mower caught. He's got all the high poetic inversion there. And he invents a look and a stanza completely out of whole cloth. So he sounds like a traditionalist, but he's being very inventive. And he's doing it in the ultimate artificial scenario, the suburban lawn mowing of the 50s. So that's pretty clever, I would say.
Which is itself its own weird formal tradition, like
it is itself.
Because you know every Sunday or whatever you go and mow the lawn.
I mean, what I said in the and I guess I'd like to ask Amaris maybe to respond to what I'm about to say if she likes. What I said in the video, and I've said many times since, is that Wilbur is using his considerable poetic talents and metrical and stanzaic skills on what you would call small game. He's kind of overdoing it, and it strikes me as showing off. Just to do all that for this toad, and he makes it into some mock heroic mythic scene of this guy going to lost amphibious emperies. It's just he's having a go at the whole thing because he's basically proving his poetic prowess. Seems to me that the modernists are more serious than this, but I think they would want, certainly Williams would want to deal with a seriously large game or a seriously large object of observation and not play around with something so small. Maurice, what do you think of that? Am I being unfair?
Well, I think his sort of over-the-top language of sort of this epic face-off kind of is what Lily was saying, taking this very mundane experience of running over a toad with his lawnmower adds to the humor of the poem. It just inspires it with that sort of mocking tone. And it's just taking I guess, a short anecdote from his life and using it to be representative of being caught in suburbia.
Does anybody want to say, and then we're going to go around and wrap up with final words, does anybody want to say, does this poem belong in a chapter that is about mid-century formalism and the rolling back of modernism? Does anybody want to see how that works?
Actually, I've got a tweet that kind of says that.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So I love this. Terry Talty just tweeted.
Terry.
Yeah. The idea that the seed is cut from every one of the blades of grass, the castration, is anti-Whitmanian and creepy.
Wow.
Which is
Terry.
Such a phenomenal tweet, first of all, but second of all, like...
Yeah, she used up all those characters.
Such a fantastic tweet.
Anti-Whitmanian.
But I love that.
That's right, because
here
this is the grass. This is the leaves of grass. And he's castrating the leaves of grass.
Dang it, Wilbur, leave us our leaves of grass.
And leaving us our toads.
Come on.
Ribbit. Yeah, anti-Whitmanian. Yeah. Anybody want to add to that?
Well, go ahead. Oh, just thinking about the suburbs and like Williams standing in sort of for a lot of modernism in our course, I think.
And a guy nearby in the suburbs.
Yeah, is like the king of the suburbs, but like, well, Williams is like dancing naked in his room and ignoring his wife and baby. Wilbur is like smoking a cigarette,
taking it all out on the toads.
Yeah, and like destroying a toad. So it's not that like modernism can't come to the suburbs. It's just about like attitude, maybe.
Well, and Dave wants to say something. Dave Poplar, will you add something? And then Eric, somebody else? Yeah, Kirby, and then we're going to wrap up. Dave?
I just need to stick up for Richard Wilbur here. I don't think he's showing off or having... I mean, I think he's sort of showing that by using this form and making this epic poem out of this small event, I think he's sort of showing that art is really artifice. And Cottage Street 1953, which is in ModPo Plus, which is still one of my favorite poems. What I love so much about that is that he's using very strict formal form, but showing that he himself is really impotent, and in a sense he's just showing art is art. It's not that he's trying to put himself above everything. I think he's really self-effacing in a lot of this.
So maybe he's the rollback in him and X.J. Kennedy is saying, modernism, you guys are full of genius and you have these great claims, but actually it's just a poem. Take it down a notch. Maybe there's a little bit of that. Kirby, do you have the microphone? Yeah, let's go to Kirby, and then we're going to go around for final words and wrap up.
I was struck by the grass being castrated and that morphing into the castrated suburban male. There was something about that image that struck me as maybe the laughter in his, or the laughter in the poem finally winds up being suburban impotence.